explain to us what's going on with the public water suppliers and what your process has been and where you're at.
Thank you. Again, my name is Matt Knudsen. I'm with Palmdale Water District. As many of you may know or may not know, one of the seats on the Watermaster board is a representative from the Public Water Supplier Group. And just for informational purposes, those of you that don't know, there's 12 agencies that are part of the Water Supplier Group. And they are California Water Service Company, City of Lancaster, City of Palmdale, Desert Lake Community Services District, Little Rock Creek Irrigation District, LA County Waterworks District number 40, North Edwards Water District, Palm Ranch Irrigation District, Palmdale Water District, Quartzsville Water District, Rosamond Community Services District, and West County Water District. All of those are voting or have a say in who's selected for the representative of the Public Water Supplier Group, with the exception of West County Water District. So the process we went through recently is the Public Water Suppliers met a couple different times. The first time we met, we talked about the process to go through to select our representative. So each agency went back and determined if they wanted to nominate somebody from their elected officials to sit on this board. So we went through that process. There were originally 3 nominations. One of them got pulled. So we met yesterday as a group, kind of tallied up the votes or the recommendation, and that's why Mr. Thibault is sitting up there. So he had the majority of the votes. Part of the process also is to have each agency go back and confirm the committee's recommendation for Mr. Thibault. So we're in that process now, but we thought it'd be a safe bet to have him sit up there today and represent the public water suppliers. We also talked about the possibility of having an alternate. So Kathy McLaren, who's a Palmdale Water District board member, will be the alternate to Mr. Thibault. So that's where we're at in the process. Be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
What was your voting structure?
The voting structure was each agency recommended a committee advisor to represent each agency. So when we met yesterday, we met with the committee advisors and or committee representatives, and those representatives had the authority to vote.
One member, one vote?
Correct. It's not a weighted vote. Each agency has one vote, with the exception of West County Water District. Yep.
Matt, I had a question. Can you talk about your advisory committee and how you guys have organized it and what its functions are?
Yeah, so also part of the process, now it appears that we have Mr. Thibault representing us on the board. Each agency has a representative for the advisory group, so our process right now is to meet on a monthly basis and come up with some rules and regulations, policies, etc., to determine how we give direction to Mr. Thibault to represent the group. So we're kind of in that early stage of developing the procedures for the group to meet and give direction to Mr. Thibault.
Well, was there any term for Mr. Thibault to sit on the board?
We're still talking about that, but...
Can I ask all speakers, if you can remember this, if you don't, I'll remind you, if you could repeat the question and then give the answer, because we're on tape and we want to make sure everybody who's on GoToMeeting and on the tape knows what's being asked.
Okay.
Thanks.
So the question was, how long is the initial term for Mr. Thibault?
Yes.
We talked about a 2-year term initially, and then reevaluate it at the end of that term.
Any other questions? Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Why don't we give applause to our next Watermaster member, Leo Thibault. And let me give you an idea of my position on here, since I was the first member elected to the Watermaster board by avek. I took the lead with avek in starting these meetings, getting this process going. Now that Leo is here, Leo and I will collaborate and talk about things and make decisions jointly. As we add members, we will then, as a committee, or actually as a Watermaster board, will make the decisions jointly. So that's what I intend to do. Also, again, to remind everybody, in the judgment, it says avek may be the administrator for the water board. The position that I have right now is, until we get the Watermaster board together, we need staff to run these meetings and to administer what we have. And we will use avek till that time. Once the Watermaster board gets assembled, then the Watermaster board will decide who administers the board. And it doesn't have to be avek, but until then, we will do that. Any questions about any of that? Thank you. And at this time, we have the county, and Ariki is representing the county, and he will explain what's going on with the process of the county selecting their member on the Watermaster board.
Hi everybody. Again, my name is Ariki. I'm the General Manager, Functional General Manager for Los Angeles County Waterworks District. And I hate to correct Rob, but I'm here on behalf of LA County Waterworks District 40. It is LA County Waterworks District 40 and not Los Angeles County. As I have said last time, the connection between the county and LA County Waterworks District 40 is the LA County Board of Supervisors serve as the LA County Waterworks District 40 Board of Directors. And when we address the board, we address them as such. As you may surmise, the process for us is a lot longer than the process, say, for avek board or for the public water suppliers or any other agency when it comes to the selection of the board member. We have started the process. I believe it's going to be another 6 to 8 weeks before we actually make the board agenda and recommend someone. I indicated last time that the intent is to recommend me, at least for the first 2 years or so, because of the history and because of my function with LA County Waterworks District 40. Now that doesn't mean that the board is going to go with the recommendation. They could, or they could choose to pick up someone else. We'll see. We also need, at the same time, we need to go ahead and recommend the public water supplier board member and get that also approved and confirmed by the board. So that's where we are in the process. But until then, I will be representing LA County Waterworks District 40. Got permission from my county councils here, so hopefully that kind of clarifies where we stand.
Adam, that's great, and thank you for the correction. And now if the landowners, I believe Dennis Atkinson and John Calandri, if you can let us know where you're at or what your plans are.
I think Gary and I are good.
Gary and you? Okay. Okay.
Is that all right? Yeah.
Great, thank you. So Gary Van Dam and John Calandri, if you'd go up to the speaker. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. All right, just, we're going to be totally transparent today, so we might ruffle some feathers, we may not, I don't know. We met separately, we met as groups, we made phone calls, we're doing everything we can. Like I said a month ago, we're very fractured. It's going to be difficult, so that's going to be a preemptive statement to what I'm going to suggest later. We talked about trying to contact all the landowners through certified mail. We've also talked about trying to have a meeting in person, which we've kind of leaning towards that. We have a desire to maybe ask avek to help us to facilitate that, because it is a big job for all of us individual landowners. We don't know how we could possibly do it. We're all kind of busy and it's out of our realm of expertise. So that's something we're throwing out to the group. And there are some attorneys here. We don't want to do anything wrong. So if we are headed in the wrong direction and something is wrong with the way that we're doing it, let us know. We don't want to have a lot of attorneys involved as landowners. We want to do it ourselves. And maybe that's going to be a little difficult, but that's our desire. And then Gary was going to explain the advisory committee that we thought we would.
Yeah, we just spoke a little bit about possibly a 9-member advisory committee for the landowners, so we can get their input into the right direction, but they want the 2 seats to go in the direction. Also, we were talking a little bit about, like we said, trying to keep the attorneys out of it. One,
Careful, Gary.
oops. And that the advisory board would be able to call meetings and call the 2 landowners in, so that way they'd be represented in the right way and be able to talk to them at any time. So this is an early stage for us, and so we're also open to suggestions, and just want to make sure we work with the landowners and everybody involved. And if there's any questions, we could take them.
Matt, could you come back up and maybe again go over how your advisory committee was formed and what its functions are? It seems like a good time to, since they're talking about advisory committee.
Well, here's one of the things that we were looking at for an advisory board. There's a very diversified group of landowners on Exhibit 4. So as part of our advisory committee, we're looking at maybe a well expert, a pumping expert from the valley, maybe mutuals, manufacturing and industrial represented on this advisory committee, large growers, small growers, possibly somebody from the water banking, from the dairy community. So we're going to try to get as many people involved as we can from the different industries in the Antelope Valley. I think we're trying to cover that. We're open to suggestions, except for John Lucas.
How many meetings have you guys had since the 29th, that phone conference we had with the overlider? Sounds to me like there's stuff going on that the mutuals are not privy to. I don't know anything about any other meetings since the meeting we had on the 29th, when I had a disagreement with your attorneys. So are we being excluded? Are the mutuals being excluded, Joe?
Our attorney's not even.
Then why don't I know about it? Why don't the mutuals know?
Because that's one good reason why we're asking maybe AVEC to facilitate if that's not a problem, because we are all busy doing our jobs and it's hard for us to think of everything, and you know, John, I wouldn't leave you out on purpose.
No, I don't think you would, John, but I think somebody else would.
Well,
Okay?
well.
So I don't think you personally would, but I think other people would.
But, I mean, obviously, I was thinking about you if I, put mutuals on the list and stuff. So, we're trying to include everybody, and we're up here being totally transparent.
Yeah, and again, this is what this advisory board is going to do.
Well, who made the decisions on the advisory board?
We
I know
didn't.
nothing about that
Well,
either.
this is all
Is it
open
Gary?
to-
Is your name Gary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It is, again, it's all open to all of you.
Well, I have to be
All the
notified
landowners.
either.
We're just
To be
throwing things out
participating.
that we talked about each other. It's Gary and I calling each
Right.
other.
Okay, so this is your,
It's
a
strictly,
small-
yes,
a small
strictly a
group,
small
okay.
group of,
Okay.
Yeah,
we're
ideas
talking.
that
this
we're
is
throwing out
nothing
to the
that,
whole group.
I would
to say, hey,
appreciate
You're in the
if-
right direction.
Guys,
Mr. Calandri.
Guys,
would-
John?
I'm not arguing.
No, I know. I know you're not. I just want to slow it down so that our tape will get who's
Okay.
talking. So if one person can talk at a time would be great.
Mr. Calandri, you will invite us to
Yes, sir.
participate in all this, so we know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
The only thing, actually, Matt, can you take a position at the staff table back there, and if you hit the button, you can talk on the mic.
And again, like I said, we want comment from the advisory, and all the landowners, so we're after that. Yeah, so don't feel left out. We're just in the early stages, we don't even know ourselves yet.
Yeah, just like, we're gonna start a baseball team, who do we want on the team, and you just start naming names. Your name's next.
So, and Mr. Brunick, are you here? So, could you come up to the staff table and sit next to Matt, because I need to ask you some questions too. So, no, you're still there. You're on the hot seat for a while, guys. So, at this point, do you guys want help in some way? Do you want, I know Mr. Brunick is counsel for AVEK, general counsel, and has been our adjudication counsel. He has worked closely with all of your counsel, and give us an idea of what type of help you would like, if any.
Okay, the people that we've talked to, there's been nobody that has disagreed with having AVEK help. Like I said a month ago, the court order's done. The fighting's done. We just gotta try to all get to the goal. Maybe getting a list of landowners, correct me if I'm wrong, decide whether we want a personal meeting or we want to do it by certified mail. We're leaning towards having a big meeting with everybody. Maybe we could have it here, if the city would allow us to, so we can go face to face, eye to eye, which is the way we kind of do it, and just start hammering it out.
Okay.
But we got to get them here.
And let me ask a question, Mr. Brunick. There's a, in the middle of your mic, there's a little thing to push and the green light will go on. So is that something AVEK can do, or is it something we, now that Adam and Leo and I are on this board, can we call a special meeting to start the process? Or, and I know there's landowner attorneys out there, can you give us some direction?
I think all these two gentlemen are asking for is that AVEK organize the meeting and let them then organize themselves and determine who's going to advise them and how they're going to elect two board members. I think we just function as a clerical body and make the meeting space available and then call the meeting and coordinate with you two as to making sure we've got everybody on Exhibit 4, so notice goes out with appropriate timing, and maybe you can hand deliver Mr. Ukested's notice to him.
You know, Bill, you're not helping matters, okay? I got a decision to make after today's meeting, okay? And you're not helping to make that decision.
But you know, it would take some time, and we would have to coordinate that with you guys as to.
And I think that's what we're looking at, just a clerical
Yeah, I don't.
assistance, so we can
I think
get everybody
that's
together.
what we stepped up to do in the Justice Roby process, and there's language in the judgment. So we will cooperate, make space available, have, you know, if you want staff available to keep minutes and so on, and then, but eventually there's going to have to be, you know, you're going to have to vote and determine the method of how you wish to vote for the appropriate two representatives, and then Adam, I mean, then it's five people can start functioning as a Watermaster board. I don't think that's a problem. I think AVEK could do that.
Actually, and now I have some other help, so go ahead, could you just say your name and who you represent?
I'm Keith Lemieux. I don't know if you guys can hear me in this. Keith Lemieux, I represent some of the public water suppliers. And I'm also a designate on the advisory committee for the public water suppliers.
Great.
And public water suppliers, we really appreciate the work that AVEK's been doing to get the ball rolling. But it strikes me that it might not be appropriate to have any one party sort of influencing, even benignly, how other members are selected for the Watermaster board, just from an appearance standpoint, if nothing else. I was going to suggest if there's going to be aid given to the landowner group, that it be done sort of formally somehow on behalf of the Watermaster, as opposed to any of one of the three parties up there that are currently forming the Watermaster. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was closing in on that too, so that's a very good suggestion. Mr. Wellen, from county councils, could you give us some input? I think what Keith just said, and I haven't had a chance to talk to our other members up here, but I think maybe the process would be better if we, at least the three of us that are sort of on the Watermaster board, conduct a meeting and help in any way we can. But what's your thoughts about that being appropriate and what the next step would be?
Thanks, Rob. First, I want to echo Keith's appreciation for AVEK stepping up and getting the ball rolling with this. And I agree with what Keith said, be concerned about having one Watermaster board entity involved in that decision-making process. I think the Watermaster, as a whole, can be involved in that. So I join in what Keith is saying, and it's you were heading along the same path there. Also, just to toss something out here, I don't mean to change the subject, but just while I have the floor, with respect to the idea of advisory committees, I think everyone agrees that it's a good idea and we want to do that. There are some provisions in the judgment in, I think it's section 19, that talk about...
Excuse me, Mr. Well, we actually have a presentation on that very subject.
Okay, all right. Well, well then, there is something in the judgment on advisory committees. I think that would be a roadmap. I think everyone agrees it's a really good idea. I think there's a process that's set forth in the judgment that will help everyone get to the place that we're trying to get to. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Well. And if I could have Leo and Adam give their opinions.
Well,
I'm glad we have the attorneys here because I think this is a legal process, the selection of the Watermaster board and the function of the Watermaster board and ultimately what we're going to be doing. So I'm glad that they are kind of guiding us through this process. I wish there is some sort of stipulated judgment light document that we all can read in half an hour or so. I really do. I think that would be, as you pointed out to the gentleman here, that there is a process that needs to be followed to form the advisory committee. I'm sure there is, and I'm sure you guys thought about everything, but I haven't read the entire document in details, and I'm sure a lot of people have not. So I don't know if it would be, like I said, it would be nice to have this judgment light document that can guide us through this process. Maybe it would be helpful to people. Maybe their attorneys has to do. I'm not sure. I know you don't want to involve attorneys. I agree with you, but unfortunately, this is an attorney's document.
Adam, last night we actually had a special board meeting and Dwayne put together the judgment light document PowerPoint that we talked about. Spent a couple hours going through it, so Dwayne, I'd be very happy to offer you up to any of the groups to give your Judgment Light presentation to. And Leo?
my first chance to talk to you, and I would say this especially to the farmers, that I was raised on a farm, spent my adult life in agriculture, and I think that any decision you make has got to come from you, or knowing the mentality of farmers, there will be a lot that will not like that. Having said that, and a good possibility of being on the water board, I would offer any help, but what you need to do is take this a bite at a time. And I think if you would prioritize the things that you need help with, and let us know in terms of the three that are here now, we would be glad to help with whatever. But I think the decisions have got to be yours to ask for help, because you can help a farmer, but if you tell them what to do, you got a problem. Thank you.
And just for full transparency and disclosure, and I've told many of you in this room this, I'm really honored to be on this board with Leo. Leo was my agricultural science teacher for 4 years, my FFA advisor, and an agricultural shop teacher for 4 years. Everything I know about parliamentary procedure, running meetings, public speaking, raising animals, living life, Leo mentored me in that, so it's a great honor to be here. And I'm pretty nervous because I think he's probably grading me, so.
Well, thank you guys, thank you, Leo. And we do believe that this is a farmer's 2 seats, and we don't believe that a bought position should sit in that spot. And so, with that being said, it's up to us farmers to make that right decision. So, we appreciate the landowners and Leo and everybody that's working hard towards getting this done.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much. Sitting 3 members of the Watermaster Board facilitate a meeting of the landowners from Exhibit 4 and take the necessary action to have notice sent, have a general organizational meeting, and assist with leading it. Is that, and we have other landowners here that are on Exhibit 4. So, and Bill, you know it as well as anyone, or either Warren, if you could just explain the Exhibit 4 and what that means in a simple way. It's basically the landowners that have a certain quantity of water, and those are the members that will be electing the landowner representatives. Is that my understanding?
That's correct. And as I get it, the 3 of you will send out notice to the landowners coordinated meeting with an appropriate date, and hopefully then stand back and let them do their own organization as to what they choose to, how they choose to organize themselves and elect the 2 board representatives. Mr. Cush is going to correct me, but I think, is that how you envision it, or?
It's been in the case a long time, but I've never corrected you.
Mr. Kush, if you could take the speaking.
I think what the group is going to need, I've been in enough public processes to know that if there's not clear objectives and deadlines, that those deadlines are going to slip, and what we think is a 3-month process is going to turn into a 2-year process. And so my suggestion would be to set up a series of meetings in advance, whether they're 2 weeks apart or a month apart, and have an agenda and have specific objectives to achieve at each of those meetings, with the final meeting being for purposes of a vote. And I think that's the only way to get this done and get it done quickly.
And would you be supportive of having our Watermaster group working on the details of that with the landowners? Do you want to have a attorney group do it? Do you want a landowner group to do it? What would the suggestion be?
I'm open to that, and certainly I think that this is a process that anybody that feels like they want to participate ought to have a right to participate, so they don't feel disenfranchised. But I think the attorneys could serve a limited role in coming up with an agenda and circulating that to their clients and seeing if their clients want to add anything to that agenda with clear steps in terms of who has a vote, what is the weight of that vote, are we going to have collective voting or singular voting, and nominations, a nominations process, and then a voting process. And somewhere along the line, we're going to have to talk about duration. In speaking with Mr. Atkinson, he was in favor of to get the process moving, of a short initial term, 2 years, and then if folks want to consider a longer seat, like 3 or 4 years, I think certainly we'd be open to that.
Thank you for the suggestions.
I have
John, why don't you come up on the speaker?
I'm not going to. Just clarification,
Yeah, just say your name so people are on there.
Antelope Valley United Mutual Groups. I want to make some clarifications. That is not, the 2 seats are not a farmer's seat, they are a landowner's seat. Am I correct, Mr. Booth?
You're correct.
Thank you. That's all I want.
Robert, can I ask you a question? Will the agenda, and let's assume AVEC is going to bear the administrative cost of doing all this, the notices and so on, with the direction of Adam and Leo and so on. How soon can we start getting the initial notice out, and then how do the landowners wish to follow up on this?
Well, I think there ought to be a proposed meeting schedule and maybe 30 days apart. Let's pick a date and let's set those dates now. And then let's have a date maybe 2 weeks out to have proposed agendas drafted and sent out to the group, at least for the first meeting, with respective agendas for the second, third, and however many.
You've heard from Keith and Warren, and they don't want to step on that process. Who is going to prepare the notice and the agenda and so on? Who do you want to do that?
Haven't given that any consideration. I think certainly having participation from the Watermaster, from my standpoint, would not be a problem, or from AVEC. But there's got to be a dialogue, and I think the practical reality is that the only people who sit around in front of a computer and look at emails all day are lawyers. They're not farmers. Farmers are out farming. And so I think drafting those agendas is going to have to be lawyer-driven, at least initially.
Well, we could get a notice out, assuming the landowners can agree on a date. We could get the initial notice out tomorrow to everybody on Exhibit 4.
Yeah.
Then I look at it as this is a landowner organization process, and the landowners then at the first meeting should participate, and John or Dennis or Mr. Van Dam can organize. Well, that's all we want to do. We just want to, we'll provide the administrative process to get you all in a room, but after that, isn't it the landowner's responsibility to take it from there?
It is, and the landowners fought long and hard in this case, so I'm assuming that they want to be around to manage the benefits of the solution they've come up with. So I think folks will come forward and participate in that process. I can't tell you who they are today because I just haven't had those conversations yet.
Can you give these 3 gentlemen a date?
Well, Bill, let me throw this out. When we started this process, the first meeting was a month ago. We had this meeting today just to iron out all these details. Right now, we tentatively have a meeting scheduled for March 16th. We could use that meeting as an organizational meeting for the landowners, if that works for everybody. We can use this facility or a neutral facility. We can work on that. I got a quick consensus from Adam and Leo, and I think all 3 of us are in agreement. We are fine with organizing the meeting. We will be at the meeting. We do not feel we should lead the meeting or would lead the meeting. What we could do at the meeting, though, is possibly have Matt as the advisory. What's your position with the public water suppliers now?
Yesterday, the representatives appointed me as the chair of the Public Water Suppliers Advisory Committee.
So we could have Matt do a short presentation to the landowners on his position, how they formed it, how they went about their vote. We could provide whatever information somebody wants to agendize about the judgment, kind of had an organizational meeting just for you guys. And then you guys choose who you want to lead the group. You can be up here, you can be down there, you can figure it out, kind of how we had to figure it out. and then we will sit and provide you any support, guidance, anything we can do as a group. We can, I'm sure, Mr. Wellen, would you be able to join us in a meeting like that, and we can bring Bill for our side, and you guys can bring whoever you want, just to make sure we're running a neutral, good process.
Sure, that sounds like a good idea.
One
Keith, of course.
One approach might be to convene the landowners an hour before your March meeting and get them in a room and see if we can't build a consensus and make those determinations. Again, I think it comes back to having an agenda of decisions that need to be made and enforcing the group who's there to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Kutch, I think from what we've been doing with these, we can dedicate the whole meeting to that, because the whole idea, and if you guys want us to just organize it, you go in on your own with all those on Exhibit 4, that's fine. We can work it out, but we can have meeting facilitators here, we can do whatever is best for this process.
well, that's, I don't want to purport to make the decision for the group, but I think as a start, I'd be in favor of the March 16th date. John?
Yep,
You in favor of that?
fine with me.
Okay, good.
I'll have to come up with the new right words, politically correct words. Landowners or overliers, glad you corrected that. With the landowners that are here, would it make sense to, in this letter that's going to go out notifying of the March 16th, if that happens, meeting, say to the landowners, if you are interested at all in a seat on this board, in one of those two positions, come to that meeting prepared to make that known. I think it would save some time and get things rolling if they knew ahead of time, rather than come to the meeting and find out, hey, a month from now I'll tell them I'm interested in running or being on that board. Landowners are here, does that make any sense?
And Mr. Calandri, I saw your hand was up, one of you.
Well, I'm gonna get myself in trouble again.
Could you get, if you're gonna get in trouble, could you be on the speaker so you know why you're in trouble?
We said we didn't want attorneys involved, and no offense, but Mr. Wellen and Mr. Lemieux make a suggestion and everybody jumps on it. We don't want to do anything wrong as landowners. But we don't want a bunch of attorneys at the meeting either. We want the landowners to be there. We want advice. And I'm speaking for myself right now. I'm not speaking for the landowners. I'm speaking for John Calandri. Already, it got sidetracked. We're independent guys. I, for one, and no offense, don't want to.
Okay.
Unless there's a purpose that I can be convinced. I want the landowners there, and maybe the board there, and do it. But I'm just one landowner.
Mr. Calandri, if you could hang out there for a minute. Here's my thoughts, and certainly Leo and Adam will have other ones. My suggestion, at least to have AVEK council there and county council there, is because we're two members of the Watermaster board, and then we would have Mr. Lemieux here because he's representing the public. So the three members of the Watermaster board, I think we would like our council here. So if you guys ask us for advice, we're going to give you advice that we think is right, and we just kind of want them in the background to say yay or nay in case we're directing you in a wrong way, and also to make the system transparent. You know, I've said this many times. I share in the concerns of everybody who's been involved in this litigation, is that there were so much paid to attorneys that was taken out of this valley. And I want to minimize that too, but I also want to make sure that whatever advice the three of us are giving you, we can just look over to our counsel and they can shake their head. And I promise you we'll keep them out of the process as much as possible. But, you know, this has been 16 years of litigation. It's the attorneys who drew up this document, And I, for one, even being an attorney, would not feel good about giving any type of direction or help or anything unless I'm sure that what I'm saying is correct. That's the only reason. I think, you know, we can't say that counsel for landowners can't come. We have to invite everybody. Some will bring counsel, some will not, some will come on their own. It's how all these meetings have been. But when we started having these public meetings, we asked for the parties to come, and if the attorneys wanted to be there, they could come too. And I would suggest that's how we, you know, phrase this, but we can't stop them from coming. That's the reason I, for one, wanted Mr. Brunick to be here, not for him to run the process, not for him to get in the way of the process, just for him to advise. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I think from our perspective, or my perspective, is that we were, avek and the landowners were opposed to each other on a lot of issues, but we, for the betterment of the group and to get this thing resolved, we came up with the idea, hey, let's have avek help us. Everybody got upset, it would be okay. Mr. Rudy said it would be okay. And then it got really complicated here for me. But anyway, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I have no desire to complicate it, and I promise you that I will do my best to keep the attorney time to a minimum.
All right, that's good enough for me.
Thank you.
I would just like to make one comment that the water board is not going to be effective until it's complete with 5. And so anything we can do to speed that up, I think that everybody feels a sense of urgency to get in action. So that's one of the reasons that I'm sure the 3 of us are interested in helping you wherever you say you need help. And again, I will reiterate that you first of all need to tell us exactly what you need help with. So we never came to a conclusion or decision of whether or not you think it'd be appropriate landowners to put in that letter that if you're interested in that position, let us, come to the meeting prepared to make that known. Is how you want to handle that, Rob?
Well, let's just put it out there. So how this is shaping up, and if anybody wants to take the mic and do a different summary, is we as a Watermaster committee, let's call us, and members of the Watermaster board will help facilitate a landowner meeting. We will use avek staff to help us do that. We will send out a letter to everybody on Exhibit 4, inviting them to a meeting on March 16th, 2016 at 2 p.m. We will ask for the landowners, whoever wants to I don't know if we need an agenda, I guess we do, so to propose agenda items. If there's a committee of the landowners that wants to meet with us, whoever from the landowners wants to meet with us, we can make it available. We will set a flexible agenda for that meeting. The plan for that meeting will be to get everybody on Exhibit 4, letting them know that we're assisting with the process of moving forward to help the landowners in any way possible to get their 2 representatives selected to the Watermaster board. We will facilitate a meeting to make that happen. And Leo's suggestion is in that letter we put, be prepared to nominate members from the landowner group at that time. And then we will schedule another meeting, or we can schedule that second meeting right now so that we know. The purpose of the second meeting, we would hope, would be to have an election. If the first meeting doesn't come to a point where we can select somebody or get to that point, we'll use the second meeting to continue to facilitate a process to make that happen. That's what I would suggest, and let's talk about that. Patty, did you get 90% of that down? Great, thanks. That's why we need somebody here to administer it, so we can put down stuff we say. So, Dennis, you have the vote?
I think that's an excellent idea, but I would move the meeting in a couple of weeks so that the 16th we can keep
this process moving, because I don't think we're gonna get anything done on the 16th. So we need to get all the preliminary stuff out of the way so that when we come back the 16th, we can actually probably have some votes and some different things. So I think, you know, I agree with Robert that we don't want this to drag out for a couple of years. There's a whole group of people that I'm sure we're gonna rehash several of the old battles in that first meeting until we can kind of get everybody past that and start doing what we're gonna do. So I think what John and I were asking was that basically what you're asking is to have AVEC be the facilitator of sending out paperwork, not to run the meeting or not to do any of that. Correct, and and having you ask them, I think is the proper way.
And in our language, we would say that's a compound question, because I think there's three things they have to answer, so let me try to go through each one. Yes, the AVEC will administer getting out the notice for the meeting. Yes, the Watermaster board, Adam, Leo, myself, will come to that meeting, and hopefully by that time the landowners have an organizational process in place to lead the meeting. At that meeting, as we discussed, we can do a few short presentations to you how the public water suppliers organize their vote process, their advisory committee, and so on. Dwayne can give a overview of what the judgment says about an advisory committee, and then we can just facilitate. The next step is to let two members try to help with the process. Hopefully you guys have some leadership to do that. If you don't, we can help facilitate that in any way we can.
So I don't disagree with any of that. I think we just should have the meeting sooner instead of later.
My only concern is, and we'll throw it out to the rest of your groups here, is we want to make sure there's enough time for everybody to change schedules if they need to. The first meeting will be the most important meeting. If we hurry that meeting, we're going to get criticism. But what we could do is today have everybody talk about the second meeting, maybe being 2 weeks later, and maybe a third meeting, and that was Mr. Cush's idea. The third meeting be 2 weeks after that, with the goal of having this done no later than the third meeting, hopefully by the second meeting. How would that be?
No, that's fine.
Would that be something
I just want to get the frequencies close enough that we can.
Okay.
But summer's coming up and farmers are going to be hard to get hold of.
Yeah, we want to do this during the winter. And John, again, I hate to keep doing this, but because we have 35 people on the call-in line, so just say your name before you say your comments, and I'll try to get everybody to do that.
John Eucastet. This might be a question for Warren. Now, seeing that you three are in the public agencies, would this have to be an open meeting to all the public, Warren?
I think you're referring to the Brown Act and how it applies to this.
Right.
I think that the judgment states that Watermaster board meetings are going to follow the Brown Act protocol, which is it's an open public meeting, there's notice given in advance.
So this will be an open meeting? It's public?
You're talking about the meeting of
that
the landowners?
be set up.
You know, John, it's an interesting question, and I'm not sure off the top of my head if the Brown Act would apply to it, and that's something that we can take a look at. I don't know if Bill or Keith have any thoughts on that, or any other lawyers in the room.
I don't think so. This is not a committee, a formal committee, or an ad hoc committee, or whatever. It's an organizational meeting. The Brown Act doesn't apply. I think it's pretty clear.
Okay, so it can be a closed meeting. It can be a closed meeting to the overliers.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Landowners. Yeah, landowners. My feeling is if you don't want the attorneys there, or as Mr. Calandri has indicated, I'm perfectly willing to go sit outside with Warren.
That's not where.
No, I know, but we don't have to be in the meeting. I just want I think Dennis's point is, let's get going.
Bill, I think what John, I think I get what you're saying, thank you. For this meeting, yeah, that's a good point. We're trying to do this as a public, transparent type thing, and your vote, you may not want that. I mean, not that way, but you may want just the landowners present for some time.
That's what this meeting is for the landowners, to decide. Now, the landowners weren't privy to the public water supply.
Right. No, that's a good point.
Okay, so I just thought I'd bring it to your attention so that,
John, I think that's a real good point, and what we can do is, rather than doing your meeting, or just the landowners meeting at first, we can actually do the Watermaster group meeting at first, give you those short presentations, turn this room over to those who are on Exhibit 4, and let you go from there. That would be appropriate. But
Yeah, I think so, and I agree with, what Bill said. Maybe Bill can bring a deck of cards, and Keith and I can go out in the hallway, you gentlemen, and the landowners can hash it out. That may be what it takes for them to elect the two board members.
okay, so John, in response to your comment, I think how we can run it, and I know we're going to get some other comments, is we will invite everybody on Exhibit 4. We will call this as a public meeting to begin with. We will do the short presentations that we think will be helpful for you. We will adjourn that part of the meeting. Those on Exhibit 4 can stay here, or you guys can decide you want more assistance, whatever you guys want. We just want to move the process ahead.
In my view, all we're doing is bringing you guys together so that you guys can decide how you guys want to organize yourselves, and that can be in our presence or out of our presence, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Brandon, and again, say your name so everybody on the...
Calandri. I just need 2 points of clarification from you guys. One is we're talking about avek as being separate from Exhibit 4 when they're listed on Exhibit 4. So what role does avek play on Exhibit 4 since they're listed on it?
I would have to go back to my board and get direction on that, but avek is on 4 as a landowner with overlying rights. And as far as I know, we would have a representative in the group to discuss who the representatives would be.
And there was also some question on how the vote can be administered for the landowners. Is there any specifications other than 1 vote per acre foot? How is that supposed to be structured in your guys' eyes as it pertains to the judgment?
And I'll turn to Mr. Brunek first, and then we have some
Basically, there's something like 55,000 acre feet of production on Exhibit 4, equal vote.
So equal vote and equal seats. So if, for instance, 51% of the vote is for seat 1 and the remainder is for seat 2, you're good to go. There's no special specifications for those 2 seats being different.
No, I would leave that up to the landowners. If there's a collective vote in the top, if they want to designate the top 2 vote getters, that's up to the landowners to say, this is the process we wish to use.
And there's nothing in the judgment that says that.
Yeah, no.
Okay, thank you.
And
This is section 18.1.1, talking about the composition of the Watermaster boards. It's 2 landowner parties, exclusive of public agencies and members of the non-pumper and small pumper classes, selected by a majority vote of the landowners identified on Exhibit 4 or their successors in interest, based on their proportionate share of the total production rights identified in Exhibit 4. So that's legalese for what Bill just said. And I guess avek, since it's an overlying party, but it's also a public agency, it can vote on those 2 seats, but it can't hold either of the seats. That's how I would
sanitation. I think those are the only three. I don't think the state of California has any production rights on it before, but I think how the landowners want to vote and structure the vote is up to you guys internally. And you should come to some agreement on that. All we're trying to do is, as Dennis said, get two guys in those seats.
Since this is agreed to this course, I'll jump on what Mr. Paul said, and I'll throw it out to you. Leo, from your farming background, you'll tell me if I'm saying something wrong or not. So, it might be good to have a professional facilitator here that is completely neutral. And I will discuss that with the other three members and see if we can come up with something. And if that were the case, I would see if how we would work that out. But I think that's a great suggestion. And we'll see if we can do that. So I think we have a plan. Anybody has anything else to add? Okay. And Patty, you got everything down? Good? Okay. And we will go forward with the plan.
Yes, sir. I just had one question about it. You said that...
Say again, we have 35 people on the phone.
This is Keith with you again. I got the impression from the way you were summarizing it earlier that the notice was going to go out from AVEC. I know we don't really have a Watermaster board yet. We have sort of an acting, whatever we are. But it seems like the notice should go out on behalf of whatever that entity is, as opposed to from AVEC. Is that... It might be AVEC staff sending the notice out, but the notice seems like it should go out from this entity, whatever we're describing it as.
You keep making it harder for us. We don't even have a letterhead yet. Bill, your thoughts? Can we, at this point?
You know, since AVEC is bearing the cost, it doesn't matter to me whose name is on it. Let's just get it going. Obviously, Keith has got some other concerns about AVEC's name being on the notice, but certainly if the invitation came from Adam, Leo, and Rob, I think everybody's going to get the idea. So I'm perfectly happy with that.
We'll make Adam, Leo, and Rob letterhead, and we'll send something out. Let's see what will be. It can be Pat, or we'll figure it out. Thank you. And any other suggestions, concerns? Okay, great discussion from everybody. Thank you very much. March 16th will be the next meeting. Can we plan to do a meeting 2 weeks after that? Let me ask one thing. I know we're not done yet. This is just the meeting, formation meeting. There was some discussion, I won't even call it concern. There's been discussion about rotating the meeting sites. Our only concern about rotating meeting sites is, if you were here for our first meeting, it took a while for us to figure out all the communications, how to get everything running, how to get everybody on the phone. We have computer support here. It was a process. What I would like to do, if we don't have any major objections, I'd like to continue doing the meetings here just because of that. Otherwise, we're going to have to go through this process each time we have a new site. Once we get the Watermaster board together, they can make the decision where they meet, how we do it, when we do it, and all of that. But just for sake of our staff and communications with the 35 people who are out there right now, I would like to keep it here. I'm not trying to be territorial. I'm not trying to, make Lancaster different than Palmdale. I just think it's easier. If somebody else has another site where they can set up the same communication network and the speakers and make it as easy as we have it here, I'm fine with that. I don't want to go down to the supervisor's place downtown LA. I think we should keep in the Antelope Valley, but other than that, I'm open.
Robert Bush again. Looking at my calendar, if we had meetings 2 weeks following the next meeting, would be March 30th, and the next meeting 2 weeks after that would be April 13th. And the proposal would be at least to air those dates on the notice, that this body is looking at those as follow-up meeting dates with a goal of a watermaster vote for the landowner representatives on April 13th.
So, Mr. Cushie, and not that I would have to be here, but on Wednesday, March 30th, I have a mediation that I can't miss. I am available March 31st, all day.
What's been this body's practice? Has it been to set regular meetings on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock?
Well, the first two have been, was the first one on Wednesday? Yeah, the first two have been on Wednesdays.
I think my preference would be to keep those on track, with all respect to your schedule. And I think those just end up being landowner meetings in essence to move our vote along.
Then what was the other date you suggested?
April 13th. And I don't want to suggest that I'm driving the process here, but I think if we get those dates out as proposed dates in the notice, we'll get feedback from interested parties as to whether or not those dates work. And if they don't, we can make adjustments, but at least folks start reserving those dates on their calendar.
Okay. And Adam and you? We have not. Patty, what do we need to see if this facility can be available on the 30th and the 13th?
Well, you guys are doing your next presentation, and I'll go out and I'll book it.
Okay, that'll be great.
I'll book this.
The two of you can be here on 30th and 13th. Please.
Keith Libby again. You mentioned the location, and I think I was the one who raised that issue in our group the other day about rotating the location. But having heard your explanation, actually, I think I'm sort of willing to withdraw those comments, especially since we need to set up, it sounds like a bunch of meetings very quickly. So I think it would make sense to keep the location static for now.
And I promise we'll have one in Palmdale as soon as we get the Watermaster board available. Holly, you had a...
Just for the record, the first meeting, which was the last one, was on Thursday the 25th.
Oh, thank you. So we could do it on Thursday, huh?
We would have had it on Thursday, we just couldn't do it, but it's been on a Thursday and a Friday.
Well, if we haven't set precedent yet, I would really like to be here. Is the 31st a possibility? And any, it's kind of selfish on my part, but I would like to be part of the process, so, because I've been to everyone since. Does anyone care if we do it on the 31st rather than the 30th?
As far as I'm concerned, Thursday works better.
Okay. You?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Want to move the second meeting to the 14th then, and keep it on Thursday? Yeah.
let's see if we're available on the 14th. Actually, I'd really like to keep it on the 13th if we could. We'll go every other. So, the 31st, March 31st, the 13th, we will look at those two dates. It's not Friday the 13th, so there's no reason we can't do that. And we're all good? Okay, then moving along.
Rob, just so everybody has the same information, that the Palmdale Water and AVTA, so those are possibilities. Did Rosamond say they could handle it?
I think they offered.
Yeah, I think Rosamond also.
Where is AVTA located? Are they central territory?
Yeah. Central
And,
Line.
with consensus, Adam and you and Leo, we will look for what would be another site that could do all this and give you some options too. But for these, we'll call them the landowner meetings, we will keep it here. And then for the next Watermaster meeting, we will figure that out if we can. Okay. And I was given a note to announce there are 35 people on our teleconference, We have muted them so you don't hear that bing, bing, bing each time that we did last time. So they can't talk, and we don't have to listen to them eating and all those things, but that's fine. And we're going to unmute them as soon as we're done with our presentations and ask if they have any questions. So thank you all for your patience out there in telephone world. And at this time, I would like to ask Dwayne to take the podium and talk to us about duties and responsibility of the Watermaster Board itself. And then the second item, Palmdale Water District asked us to go through a presentation on what the judgment says about the advisory committee. Dwayne, thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Dwayne, you have to say your full name too.
Dwayne Chisam, Assistant General Manager for the Antelope Valley East Water Agency. As Rob mentioned earlier, I made a presentation to the Board of Directors with regards to the judgment, highlighting some of the basic aspects of the judgment and for their information. And they asked that I come today to talk a little bit about what the Watermaster duties are as they're identified in the judgment, just to give everybody a familiarity with that. And that'll it's a continuing process of learning. This is very high-level discussion here. We're not going to get into the details here, but give you an idea of what that is, and then hopefully move on to the next topic, which is to talk about the advisory committee as it is outlined in the judgment itself. Let's see if we got this here. First slide here. The Watermaster, by definition, is an extension of the court, as everybody knows, and its real mission is to implement the judgment. That's really what drives its powers and its duties, and it comes from the judgment itself. And so, what does that entail? If you look under Section 18 of the judgment, you'll see that the powers and duties are fairly well defined. One of the main tasks is the selection of the Watermaster engineer, very important aspect. And the second topic, with the help of the Watermaster engineer selection, is adoption of the rules and regulations for the Watermaster organization. They have the ability to employ experts and agents that can work for them. They need to maintain a notice list of all of the people that are parties to the adjudication. So while everybody has a responsibility to notify the Watermaster does have a responsibility to maintain the list so that everybody is notified appropriately. In addition to that, they need to prepare an annual administrative budget on an annual basis. They have the ability to invest funds that are supplied to the Watermaster. They can also borrow funds if they deem that's necessary. Also, they have the ability to, or have the responsibility, in essence, to administer the transfers of production rights and other types of water. They also have to administer new production applications that may occur. They also need to enforce the injunctions or any unauthorized actions. So if anyone isn't complying with the judgment, they're responsible to take enforcement actions in that particular area. They also are required to have meetings and records and keep those for public view. They also are responsible for the assessment proceedings. So all the assessments, whether that's the administrative assessment or the balanced assessment or any of the replacement water assessments, those are all done by the Watermaster itself. So in summary, and you got to remember this was after an hour-and-a-half presentation. The basic, what we try to get, what does the Watermaster do, and try and put it into one page. And basically what the Watermaster powers and duties are is to enforce the injunctions that may be required, implement the physical solution, and that's a pretty daunting task to do. adjust the sub-basin areas should that be required, enter into storage agreements with entities that wish to store water within the groundwater basin, account for all the carryover water. So all the carryover water that producers have, the Watermaster is going to keep an accurate accounting of that. They're going to establish the rules and regulations for the transfer of production rights. They're going to monitor new well construction. They're going to exercise the full powers and duties of the Watermaster. And they're going to oversee the Watermaster engineer to make sure that they're fulfilling their duties and obligations. And finally, they're going to approve and submit an annual report on an annual basis. So they'll be able to put all this information together. It'll all be public, and it'll all be submitted to the court on an annual basis. So it'll be a fairly significant undertaking that'll occur on an annual basis. And in my experience has been after 2 or 3 or 4 years, this becomes a fairly routine process and comes around a lot quicker than we think, because at the end of January, and you only have 3 or 4 months to get an annual report together and get ready to go to the court. So, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any with regards to the basic duties of what the Watermaster is.
My name is Michael Moore. I wanted to know what monitoring new well construction means. I didn't see that in the description of this function. It's important. So what does it mean here?
Dwayne, repeat the question, please, and then the answer.
Sure. The monitor new well production, that's associated with the small pumpers and the small pumper requirement that's in the judgment to monitor new well production of new wells productions for the non-pumpers in that small pumper class. Also, there is a provision that if there's a transfer of pumping from one location to another, that needs to be, the Watermaster needs to be aware of that.
Well, my question really relates to what the word monitoring means, because right now public health does all the approvals for new wells, and is the Watermaster board going to have a say in the approval process? Because right now I see a circle going to go on that aspect. I want to know whether it's actually something more than just ledgers of like, this is 3 acre feet from this well, sold to somebody else and taken a new well, that sort of stuff. I didn't see that in the judgment. It's important for my life.
It'd be tough to repeat that question, but from what I understand with regards to the judgment, what it says is that they are not going to issue permits. You know, there isn't a permitting scenario. They don't decide whether you can drill a well or not. However, they do need to make, the Watermaster engineer needs to make a determination if that well will cause harm to the groundwater basin. And that's the Watermaster's job, from my understanding. So that's what I say monitor. They're going to know who's changing, who's not, and determine whether that's going to cause harm to the groundwater basin. And then under those circumstances, they would have some ability to enjoy that construction because of that.
So it's safe to say you're talking about the water right, not the well itself?
That's correct. That's correct. In other words, you may still have the water right, but you may not be able to exercise it at that particular location.
Wayne, I just had a question about enforcement. Does enforcement responsibility fall exclusively on the Watermaster board?
I think, to repeat the question, does the enforcement activities fall exclusively on the Watermaster board? I don't believe that's the case. I think any particular party can go to court and try to indicate that someone else, one of the attorneys in the office or in the room, correct me if I'm wrong, and you know, go through that particular process. However, the judgment is fairly clear about what the watermaster's duties are with regards to their injunctions and their abilities, and I'm sure that they will pretty much keep to what is contained within the judgment itself.
Still under the jurisdiction of the court.
It's still, everything's under the jurisdiction of the court. That's correct.
Any further questions?
And I think there's been you know, as we talk about advisory committees, there are advisory committees that are associated with public water suppliers, and there's advisory committees that they've talked about associated with the landowners group, and those aren't necessarily the advisory committee that is discussed in the judgment itself. These are independent advisory committees that they're using in order to be able to come to their conclusions as a group. And so it's easy to get confused when we talk about the advisory committee and what this particular advisory committee is that was identified in the judgment itself. So I'm going to use a couple of the actual wording that comes from the judgment here and under the advisory committee authority. And then we're going to open it up for people to comment on what they think it's all about. The producers are authorized and directed to cause a committee of producer representatives to be organized and to act as an advisory committee. So that's producers, anyone that's pumping water or producing water. The second aspect is the advisory committee shall act as an advisory capacity only and make recommendations on all discretionary determinations by the watermaster. So this committee, in whatever way it's made up by the producers, will have an opportunity to review the discretionary acts that the watermaster is considering. That's the way I read that. The parties shall only provide input to the watermaster through the advisory committee, so that if a party has a problem with anything that the watermaster is doing, they first need to go to the advisory committee, have an ability to review what that is before they move on to the watermaster itself, the watermaster board. Finally, the last slide I have here is just to give some ideas of what the judgment says with regards to the advisory committee itself. It shall meet on a regular basis. Number 2, it should review the watermaster activities pursuant to this judgment at least twice a year, if not more, and receive and make advisory recommendations to the watermaster. That's really what they're supposed to do. At least meet twice a year, and then make recommendations to the watermaster board. All these meetings shall be open to all members of the public. Edwards Air Force Base in the state of California shall have ex officio members of the committee. The United States may also appoint a Department of Defense liaison to the watermaster pursuant to the joint ethics recommendation as indicated. So there's not a tremendous amount of guidance contained in the judgment, from my point of view, of what this advisory committee is or what it was intended to do. And the request that we had when we sent out the notification for an agenda item for this meeting was to provide an open forum so that the parties, the members here, the producers here, can indicate to us, which we can then forward on to the Watermaster Board as to what you all believe is contained or what you'd like to see contained within this advisory committee as it moves forward. So with that, I'll let the group to come in and tell us what you think.
I'll shed some light on this provision as I understand it. Early on in the adjudication process, some parties, including one of my clients, was advocating that separate parts of the basin be adjudicated separately, and that the west portion of the basin was essentially in balance, that there were problem areas in the central region, time, we were arguing that the court ought to divide up the basin and manage it as such. So this ended up being a compromise section where those of us who wanted separate adjudication areas accepted instead separate management areas. The idea was that folks in the west would have a say if the watermaster or somebody in the central area was suggesting that pumps ought to be moved and relocated to the west. It gave, I guess, deference on a more localized basis to those parties conducting business in each of the 5 regions that they wouldn't otherwise have. And it also, I think, ameliorated some of the impact of having a 5-member board as opposed to a 7, 9, or greater member board.
Thank you, Mr. Cush. Any other comments, questions? Palmdale Water District, you'd asked us to put this on. Have we fulfilled what you had hoped we would get done?
Dennis Lamoureux, Palmdale Water District. I think, this is the start of a discussion. This is the most vague part of the governance of this Watermaster organization, so I thought it was good to start that discussion. The actual sub-area committees are more well-defined than this overall advisory committee. So just thinking about it, one idea that at least I had to throw up on the wall and shoot at is because there's so much discussion that went into the makeup of the board itself, maybe the advisory committee could be a reflection of that, with either 1 or 2 members echoing the 5 board members here that would serve as the technical advisors to the board. And then certainly the sub-area advisory committees could feed into that also. So that's just an idea to discuss.
Great. And my thoughts is, once we get our Watermaster board together, then that will be, I guess we tackle who's going to be our Watermaster engineer and the advisory committee, and then go on from there, but that's going to be up to the 5 of us.
Yeah, if I read the judgment correctly, the advisory committee will have to be in place to help choose the engineer.
Okay, that's good to know. Is that, oh, okay, thank you for that. I had no idea on that, so that's going to be our first item on the agenda. Thanks. Any other questions? And, okay, here it goes. All you 35 people on the telephone, we're going to open you up. You can talk. Don't eat and don't, okay, go Holly.
Okay, it's open.
Okay, all of you on the telephone, if you all don't speak at one time, if you have some questions, we're all here to answer them. Thank you for that. And does anybody have anything to say? And if you just say your name and what your question is, and I'll try to mediate the best I can. Is that jazz, or can we ask for some rock? Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, hopefully we gave you a chance at this point. We're going, any questions at all? Please.
You can just want to talk to me. I don't text them.
Okay, let's mute again. Thanks. Okay, we have a question. Go ahead, sir. Name and...
Greg Reed from LA Department of Water and Power.
Thank you.
And thank you for including the presentation about the advisory committee. As you pointed out, it is kind of a vague component of the judgment, and this is, pretty much new to me as, someone who's new to the area of the adjudication here. But the, the advisory committee is an interesting one. And the language that's provided in the judgment says that the committee should be called into formation by the producer committee. And so there was a comment earlier about potentially having the Watermaster board initiate the advisory committee. And so I'm kind of wondering, how does that square up with the language in the judgment if the Watermaster board is initiating the committee as compared to what the judgment says that the producer representatives would call the committee into being.
Good point, and I don't know the answer to that. I'll go to Bill first and then back up with Warren.
And just, I'll sit down now, but my second question would be as far as the representation. I think there was a comment about potentially echoing the structure of the Watermaster panel as well. And I'm not sure that the judgment is that specific as to, you know, exactly what that makeup should be as well.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And Bill, can you respond to that?
It's vague. That's about all I can say. My understanding was that the advisory committee was to provide input to the Watermaster board on any issue that they deemed appropriate, and it was to be composed primarily of producers. And one of the concerns of one of the parties was they didn't want individual producers running to the Watermaster board and raising an issue. They wanted it to be vetted first through the advisory committee, and then the advisory committee present that to the Watermaster board. My understanding was that any producer that wished to participate could attend the meetings, and how the advisory committee organized itself with a chairman or vice chairman or whatever was up to the producer committee in and of itself. My thought was like yours, to let the Watermaster board say, okay, we need to form this advisory committee, and the sooner the better. But it is limited to just producers. Does producers include the small producers? I would say yes, it probably does.
Would it be appropriate to kind of double track this, since we need the advisory committee, if that's accurate, before we need the engineer? Can we, in these meetings that we're having, start pushing for consensus on how to organize it, and as we add our members, then finalize it? Yeah, would that be productive?
I think it would. It involves everybody on, producers involve everybody on 3 and 4.
Right.
So you would have to expand the notices and so on, but I think it would be fairly simple. But he is correct that the advisory committee is producer limited, let's say. So how we do that, I think we have enough problems with the landowner getting their representative set, and then potentially have the Watermaster board say, okay, and let the Watermaster board then organize the producer. I don't have really a preference, but I think it needs to be organized, the advisory committee.
Thank you.
Would it make sense to ask the landowners to make selections to the advisory committee at the same time that they appoint somebody to the Watermaster?
They're already, everybody that is a producer is on the advisory committee, is one way you can interpret that language.
Here's what I would suggest, and we're about getting close to wrapping this meeting up. Our next meeting is going to be March 16th. It's going to be here at Lancaster City Hall. The focus of that meeting is going to be the landowner group. We're going to give a short presentation on the things we talked about, how to form an advisory group within your voting group, how to, how everybody has done their elections, where we're at, and then turn that meeting over to the landowners and focus on getting together a process to get everybody elected. Then the next meeting is going to be on March 31st as a follow-up meeting to the landowner meeting, and that will be specifically just focused on landowner getting their members on. How will we figure out, or you figure out that process? Then the 13th is going to be the next meeting of the Watermaster group, where we're going to hopefully conclude the process of an election or selection or whatever works out in those first 2 meetings. And maybe on the 13th, we'll just focus and send out a notice to everybody on 3 and 4 and say that we're going to focus that meeting on on organizing or how to organize the advisory group. And hopefully, if all goes well on the 13th, we have 5 members and we push into that subject. If we don't have 5 members, we push into it anyway because everybody will be here. Would that be something that'd be acceptable for all those here? Mr. Cush, you think that's a good use of our time?
I do. I was going to make one suggestion to advance the ball on committees, and that is, the way I read the language, it contemplates that the producers will be divided up according to their interest in each of the regions. So we're going to have to develop that list. That is, all the producers are going to have to be segregated by region.
We will, so for the meeting of the 13th, we will invite all producers, so everybody on 3 and 4, there'll be a public meeting, anybody else who wants to come, and we will start hammering out the process for the advisory committee, and we will do our best, and then everybody will at least be on the same page when we get the Watermaster board seated.
Yeah, my sense is that between AVEK and District 40, they probably have enough information to make a preliminary list of which producers ought to be in which regions, which of the 5 regions. Publish that and get that out for proof and editing to the parties. And I think that'll help us shape who the likely committee members might be in each of those regions.
Okay, great. And Dwayne, are you keeping track of all this? No, you have everything. Okay, so any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay, at this time, I really want to thank Leo and Adam for joining us. Oh, Patty, we need to...
Did you want to change the meeting?
Yes.
For the month?
Yeah, let me explain. Thank you, Patty. See why we need somebody here to help us. So March 16th is going to be here. The 31st and the 30th were not available for here. So just by default, Palmdale Water District has agreed to host it. And hopefully, Matt, you'll take care of the communications and the support out there.
Our boardroom is available that day.
Okay, perfect. So
2 o'clock on the 31st.
the meeting on the 31st will be at the Palmdale Water District boardroom. We'll put that on the notice. The 13th, we'll be back to here. Good. Anything else? So again, I'd like to thank Adam and Leo. I'd like to thank the AVEK staff. Dwayne, Chisam, thank you so much for the presentation and all your participation, and thanks for the cooperation from everybody. Have a great day.